We are just about a week away from the third Democratic presidential debate. This time around, we're going to see a much smaller pool of candidates on the stage, with only 10 presidential hopefuls participating in the debate at Texas Southern University.
As the contenders gear up for this month's big event, the DNC has announced the rules for qualifying for the October matchup. Candidates must receive at least 2% in 4 polls and have 130,000 unique individual donors by October 1st. Here to give us some insight on what to expect from these debates and to discuss who is already qualified is Adrienne Watson. She joins us via Skype. Adrienne is the director of the DNC Trump War Room. Welcome, Adrienne. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thanks for having me back.
So can you walk us through who's qualified so far and a little bit more detail on how these candidates qualify?
Yeah, so we have 10 candidates who have qualified for the debate. There's 10 spots on stage. We have still the most women who have ever been on the debate stage at one time. We've got, I think, 4 of 10 diverse candidates, which is a huge number too. So these are the rising stars of our field. And, to get on the debate stage, like you said, they had to reach 2% in just 4 polls. So they had 21 chances, 2 months of polls. 21 is a lot of polls. This was a big polling window, more polls actually than ever before. And they just had to hit it 4 times, just 2% 4 times. And then they had to reach a grassroots fundraising threshold, which was 130,000 unique donors. And that's something that we think is really important for Donald Trump. You've got to be able to raise money from small dollar donors.
So, Adrienne, as you know, Tulsi Gabbard's campaign in particular, also Michael Bennett's and maybe some others, but Tulsi in particular has raised concerns about the poll criteria in particular. Her campaign pointed out that she had exceeded 2% in 26 different national and early state polls, but only 2 of them were on the DNC's certified list. Could you just walk us through how the particular organizations were selected to have their polls count?
Yeah, so, like I said, it's more polls than ever before. It's more polling sponsors than ever before. These are all polls that are really well regarded within the pollster community. And this was made public a long time ago. So, when we announced this threshold, we announced what the polls would be. No candidates had any complaints then. I know some candidates have complaints now, and that's okay. That's something that we expect. But I think what's been remarkable about this process is that actually a huge number of people think that this is incredibly fair. I talk to a lot of folks. I see a lot of, from the Twitter threads to people I talk to here in Indiana. And you see people who never have a good thing to say about the DNC who were saying, this threshold was something that was fair. It was really to reach. 4 of 21 polls is more opportunities than these guys have ever gotten before. But, ultimately, we do have to have a threshold because we have to be able to hear the candidates on the stage as they progress and they gain momentum. We have to give more time with them. So, I've heard these complaints. I don't think they're rooted in anything. Most of the candidates who, actually all of the candidates who failed to qualify for this debate are averaging less than 1% in the polls. So, it's just something where, we have done our due diligence. We consulted with our media partners for each debate, agreed to this standard, and we have done a lot of homework to make sure it's the right one.
So a lot of these candidates that are polling below 1%, some of them have said that they're going to stay in the race, and obviously the ultimate decider of whether or not they continue is the actual votes cast during the primary. How is the DNC going to approach some of these candidates, and what's their position on making future debates, or how important are the debates in regards to the fact that really it's up to the voters to decide who is the party nominee and who is, whittled out throughout this process?
Yeah, look, that's right. It is up to the voters. And I think, when we base our standard on polling and on grassroots fundraising, it's voters that are making that decision. It's not the DNC, but ultimately there are so many candidates, and I think it would be a disservice to Democrats if you didn't get to see, the front runners of the debate all compete on the same stage. and have more time to tell you about their vision for the future. That doesn't mean to say that we want to disqualify folks who didn't qualify for this debate. One cool thing is that the polling window for the October debate is a little bit longer. So it's possible that some of these guys could, have a good month, campaign hard, get their next poll, and be able to stand on stage in October.
Yeah, there's a few that are on the bubble in particular. Adrienne, I wanted to ask you, what is the resistance to having a debate that's centered around climate? Something that almost all of the candidates have said that they're on board for. A lot of young activists have really organized around the idea of having one debate around this sort of existential crisis facing our planet. What is the resistance to that?
Yeah, look, I think climate change is an enormous issue for Democrats, of course. It's the most pressing issue of our time. But that being said, none of these debates are single issue debates, and that's for good reason. We can't, there are so many incredibly important issues, and we can't just choose one issue to zero in on that would maybe benefit one particular candidate and not choose, gun violence or healthcare. There's so many more issues. And the reality is we only have 12, right? So,
and of course, what the activists would say is the climate crisis is different than just a single issue. First of all, it touches everything, and it has to do with the actual future of the planet. So how do you respond to that criticism?
Look, I agree, but healthcare touches the economy, touches women's issues, touches so much more. The reality is, we have to have a system in place. And we have to stick by it, and the system that we have in place is fair. I think most importantly for the climate activists is that they've really gotten what they wanted. They'll have tonight actually on CNN a climate change forum featuring many of the candidates, and it's like 5 hours long. And then later this month we'll have another one on MSNBC. So these guys are allowed to do forums in which they can talk as much as they want about one issue, cover a lot more ground. We just can't call that a debate.
Adrienne, I also wanted to ask you, what do you make of the fact that you've got, of the 10 candidates who qualified for this debate, you've got one who's never worked in politics, never run for office before, Andrew Yang, who has jumped ahead of a lot of the more traditional candidates, people who have been governors, people who have been senators. What do you make of that dynamic?
Look, I think that he's doing all the right things. What we've seen so far is that we need a candidate. Democrats want a candidate who is engaging them in all kinds of places. He's going on all kinds of podcasts, and he's building his email list, and he's talking about issues that voters care about. I actually think it's exciting because this is a Democratic Party and a process around the debates that is meant to be the most inclusive that we've ever had. Andrew Yang being on that stage is a great thing for Democrats, and it's going to get a lot of people to tune in that have never been there before. So we're excited.
Adrienne, thank you so much. We're really grateful for your time this morning.
Thank you.
Next up on Rising, the Farm Bureau estimates Nebraska farmers will lose close to $1 billion in revenue this year, all because of the trade war.
Nebraska Farmers Union President John Hayson explains more about the impact on agricultural communities when Rising returns.